all the live broadcasts here on Football Tribe UG. It's already a good afternoon, and I hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are doing well. Um, Happy to be back. Happy to be back. We're a bit late, I must say. We're a bit late, really late in terms of the time when we do these broadcasts, but kindly bear with us for now. Allow me to do the usual honors and test out our audio before we get into today's conversation that does involve that preview of the weekend games that are to come our way. And it's going to be quite interesting, given the circumstances that revolve around some teams. Arsenal caught in the dilemma of pursuing, finishing top. Sorry, that's in the top four, but retaining their second slot on the Premier League table, but also bearing in mind that they do have a very, very crucial return leg fixture versus PSG next week in the UEFA Champions League. So there's all that to come. So really, so that's really going to be, very crucial as far as this weekend's fixture is concerned. So we're going to be hearing more about that, what the weekend has to offer, what it has on cards for us, and I do think the action that will be coming our way will be pretty interesting. Although I think the most big games will come on Super Sunday, pretty much as expected. Liverpool will be in action. Not that their game really matters, but it only matters in the context of where Chelsea finished in this season's table and to Arsenal. I'll be telling you about why that matters to Arsenal and more of that. But anyways, welcome back to the channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Thank you to all of those that have been joining us on different live broadcasts over the course of this week. Yesterday, we did have a very, very good conversation excuse me, about Manchester United, about a bit of Chelsea in respect to their transfer speculation and things in that line. We spoke at length about the troubles at Manchester United. I was happy to be joined by a group of colleagues from the UK there that did join the broadcast, and we had a very, very fruitful engagement. I thought, because we did have a Robert there. We did have Boss Royal as among the people that we had an engagement with, and I can see Muhammad Hassan Vlog says hi. Hi Muhammad, where are you from? I'm from Kampala, Uganda. How about you? Where are you from? Tell me, how are you doing? Those that have just joined us, those that have just joined the broadcast, kindly let me know where you are tuning in from, where you're streaming from. Let me know how you're doing. How is your morning? Is it morning in your place, or it's already afternoon, or is it night? Muhammad Hassan says he's from Pakistan. How is Pakistan, mate? How are you doing? So for all of those that have just joined us, welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. And if you're new, kindly consider subscribing and do like the broadcast. So as we get into today's conversation, that does have plenty for us to be talking about. I want to first hear from you guys, where you're tuning in from, how you're doing. You're a nice man. Thank you, Muhammad Hassan. Thank you. Much appreciated. And thank you for taking the time to join the broadcast. I really love that. Really appreciate that. How is Pakistan? Are you guys okay? Is everything all right? Do let me know. Do let me know. Guys, like the broadcast before you even think about dropping off. I know some people have internet issues, and but that's a challenge for many of us sometimes. And when you do experience broadcast breaking, blame it on the internet. Sometimes that happens, as unfortunate as it may sound. But the weekend is before us. Like I was saying, yesterday we did have very, very interesting conversations. In the morning, we had another lengthy broadcast. I think it took about an hour or so, and we talked plenty of, Manchester United and things of that nature. I see, I have Hakim Has says hi. Hi, Hakim. How are you? Where are you joining us from? Where are you joining us from? Do let me know down in the comment section. And if you do not mind, kindly like the broadcast and also consider subscribing to the channel so that we can continue to grow our community. But you're much appreciated. You're much appreciated, Hakini, there. I would be interested in knowing where you're joining us from. And then we also had some colleagues joining us from India, although for them it was like late in the night. It was about, I think, 11 p.m. or something. And some of them had to, go, rest before we ended our broadcast, but that was okay. But we were happy to have them on the broadcast. And then we had a colleague from Italy, we had another from Brazil, and many others that did join the conversation yesterday. But thank you for taking the time to join today's broadcast. Like I said, our focus is going to be on match day 35 in the Premier League, which did kick off yesterday as Manchester City beat up against Brentford by a goal to, beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by a goal to nil. That goal scored by Kevin De Bruyne, who is on his way out of Manchester City at the end of the season. Jeremy Doku providing the assist. But until that moment, I think in the 35th minute or thereabout, Manchester City had not had an attempt on target or a shot on target. And yet, Wolverhampton Wanderers had hit the woodwork at least twice in the game. And it's the kind of game that was unfortunate or unlucky for Wolverhampton Wanderers, who are under the charges of Vita Pereira, who we spoke about still yesterday, of how he goes to the pubs for after every win and that kind of thing. But that was the result. Kevin De Bruyne scoring that goal. And what the result meant is that Man City moved into third place on the Premier League table at 64 points, just 3 behind Arsenal, while in second place at 67 points, ahead of Arsenal's game today later in the evening. That is around 7:30 p.m. East African time. I do not know what time it will be in your country, but I know in the UK we are 2 hours ahead of them, so that's about 5:30 kickoff time. Maybe in the UK, maybe in Pakistan it will be around 9:30 or 10, about that time in India and Pakistan for those regions. So there is that. But anyways, here is the run of fixtures that will be coming our way for the rest of match day 35. Aston Villa are in the early kickoff and will be up against Fulham, while Everton at 5 p.m. that's East African time will be at home against Ipswich Town. Leicester City entertain Southampton. Now both these sides have been relegated, so there's not really anything to fight for beyond reputation between the two of them. While later on, Arsenal will host FC Bournemouth at 7:30 p.m. Guys, like the broadcast, please like the broadcast, and let me know where you're joining us from. Shout outs to Muhammad Hassan and Hakim Haza, who have already joined us, and let us know how they are doing. And then on Super Sunday, we will have 3 games kick off at 4 p.m. East African time. That's when Brentford host Manchester United. Brighton will be at home against Newcastle, while West Ham United will be in the London Derby with Tottenham Hotspurs. And then in the late kickoff at 6:30 p.m., Chelsea will entertain Liverpool. Liverpool, who have already clinched the Premier League title. They only have Premier League games to play, so there is nothing to worry about. Not to say that they will be play with any laxity, but I mean, beyond pushing for record points and something of that nature, there's not really much to play for the side of Liverpool. And then on Monday Night Football, Crystal Palace will be up against Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest, who on Thursday capitulated to losing by 2-0. Those goals are scored by Kevin Shedd and Yohan Wissa, for those of you that missed that action on Thursday night. So it's quite interesting, the kinds of conversation that we are hearing. But our primary focus is going to be on that Arsenal game, and then maybe a bit of the Aston Villa game because of what it means to Aston Villa. Remember, they lost on their last outing against Man City. Was it? Yes, I think against Man City, when they went on to lose by 2-1. That was at the start of at the start of last week or this week. Yeah, along the way they did lose to Man City anyways. So that's going to be important. But like I said, our main focus is going to be around Arsenal versus Bournemouth, and I'll tell you why that fixture in itself is really, really important. Now, for starters, Arsenal do have a date in the UEFA Champions League on Wednesday in the return leg semi-finals against PSG, a team they lost to at home by a goal to nil. So that means there's still a lot of work to be done. Now, that in itself gives Mikel Arteta a team selection headache ahead of today's tie with AFC Bournemouth. Now, the conversation I've been trying to follow among these Arsenal fans is that Mikel Arteta should rest some of their key players. The likes of Declan Rice, that Thomas Partey should be rested, shouldn't be risked. Maybe you get Martin Odegaard out of that team. Bukayo Saka shouldn't start, and that kind of conversation because they want them well rested ahead of Wednesday's fixture. Now, knowing the manager Mikel Arteta, stubborn as he can be, I do not think he will rest all those players. I think he will want to give them some minutes. Not all of them may start, but I have that gut feeling that he's not really going to change much, really. But and I will be giving you my sort of predicted, my predicted lineup in terms of what I do expect for this particular fixture in regards to today's context and where both teams stand, the kinds of. But when you look at FC Bournemouth, is one of those teams that do give these big teams a lot of headache. In the first leg, that was I think in October, they did beat up against Arsenal by 2-0. We all remember Arsenal finished that game with the manless following that red card that was given to William Saliba for a tag or a pull on Evan Nilsson in what was regarded to have for him to have been denied Evan Nilsson a goal scoring opportunity and that kind of thing. So for me, I do get the feeling that Arsenal will be plotting their revenge because this is a very important fixture, and it is important. Why? Because if Arsenal win today's fixture and then Chelsea lose against Liverpool on Sunday, that means that regardless of what happens in the remaining other three fixtures for the season for Arsenal, they will still qualify for the UEFA Champions League next season. So I'm sure Mikel Arteta is aware of that at the back of his mind, so he want to win at this particular fixture. In any case, they need it for the motivation going into next week's fixture. You wouldn't want to today and have your spirit, your morale, your psychology further demoralized ahead of that crucial tie, which they think they can recover from and beat up against PSG. Is it possible? Yes. Will it be a mountain to climb? Absolutely, for the Arsenal side. So it's upon that basis that this fixture is really, really important. If Arsenal win it, they strengthen their grip on that second place and move to 69 points and sort of restore that 6-point gap between them and Man City. And then also it guarantees a place in the UEFA Champions League next season, provided Liverpool beat Chelsea on Sunday. And then also they need to return to winning ways following that midweek loss to PSG for the purposes of their psychology or morale or spirits. Remember their last Premier League outing, that was last week on Wednesday. They shared the spoils in a 2-2 draw against Crystal Palace, another not so convincing display from the Gunners on the night. So there's that ready to digest. As far as the fixture is concerned, Arsenal are unbeaten in 8 home games versus Bournemouth in all competitions. That's in the league and in cups, scoring 23 goals and conceding only 4. So it's a game that they do really know how well to win, especially at the Emirates Stadium. But like I said, their first encounter this season ended in a 2-0 defeat at the hands of AFC Bournemouth, who are under the charges of another Spanish manager in Andoni Iraola, who really knows or has given a lot of headache to some of these big teams, beating up against Manchester United, I think by 3-0, going on to beat up against Man City among their casualties this season. Yes, you could argue they really had a dip in form over the last couple of games because they've only recorded 1 victory in the last 5, that victory being a 1-0 win over Fulham. And so that doesn't paint for you the best of pictures going into this particular game. Nonetheless, Arsenal on the other side have not really been much better because they've only registered 2 victories over the last 5 fixtures, and then recorded 3 draws. So clearly, you can tell that both teams are not in the best of places when it comes to recent form. But it will all boil down to who has the higher motivation of going ahead to win this particular fixture. Who do you think has the higher motivation to go ahead and win this today's particular fixture? When you look at the Premier League table, FC Bournemouth, yes, Bournemouth are as low as 10th with 50 points, but a victory could push them as high as 8th to 53 points. That's their only motivation. Whereas for Arsenal, it could potentially mean sealing a place in next season's UEFA Champions League final. In next season's UEFA Champions League, but also the motivation. We all know that some Arsenal players have come under a lot of stick following that PSG defeat. One of them being Martin Odegaard, because he did not have the best of games on a day. And then we all know Arsenal missed Thomas Partey in that game due to suspension. Now the question is, does Mikel Arteta get to start him in this particular fixture? Some think that he should reserve his energy for next week, his game, but also others do think he should start, get some bit of minutes, warm up, real game time, because he's been well rested for a good amount of days and that kind of thing. So the schools of thought that are competing in this particular discussion are quite many, especially from within the Arsenal fan base or ranks there. And it's quite interesting, again, to hear that kind of debate that we are having, because it really tells you I think we can all agree that Arsenal's biggest fixture or biggest game will be next week on Wednesday, and that's not even up for debate because practically, if you are to ask Arsenal, do you finish second in the Premier League and lose out on the UEFA Champions League, or do you go beat up against PSG and then advance to the finals, give yourself a chance to win the trophy for the first time? I'm sure we all know what the answer would be for those Arsenal fans, if anything is to go by. And then, so like I said, there's going to be a bit with that context. That's why I do get the feeling that it's going to be a bit of a headache for Mikel Arteta to eventually decide what team he does field for today's game. One other key player that he's been urged to rest, or fans think he should rest, is none other than Declan Rice, who had really a very good game against PSG, although the result did go their way, but I thought he was a standout performer on the day when things didn't really go well. But anyways, before we get to our expected lineups, here is in regards to recent times, what the two sides have been up to. Arsenal have managed to beat up against Bournemouth on 4 occasions out of the last 5, and their only defeat has come against FC Bournemouth. Against FC Bournemouth was earlier on this season by 2-0. And then in the other 4 games, Bournemouth only managed to keep, have not managed to keep a clean sheet, while Arsenal kept 3 clean sheets out of those 4 fixtures. Then, and that included a 3-2 victory for Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium. It included a 3-0 defeat for Bournemouth at home. Last season, they beat Bournemouth home and away, keeping a clean sheet in both games, beating them by 3-0 at the Emirates Stadium and by 4-0 at the Vitality Stadium. So that's the context of it. But like I said, in as regards to what recent form looks like, Arsenal only have 2 victories in recent times and 3 draws in the last 5. Those victories coming up against Ipswich Town as well as Fulham, yet you have draws against Everton, Brentford, and Crystal Palace. 2-all draw against Crystal Palace, 1-all draw against Everton and Brentford, respectively. Then for AFC Bournemouth, their last outing was a 1-all draw, a robbed 1-all draw, because I felt they were robbed against Manchester United in that 1-all draw at the Vitality Stadium. Then they shared the spoil with Crystal Palace a weekend earlier in a goalless draw. Then you had Fulham. They beat up against Fulham, and then a 2-all draw against West Ham United, and they lost to Ipswich Town. Now, let's get to speak what we do expect, what teams will start for this particular engagement, for this particular fixture. David Villa is a mainstay, and in any case, they cannot bring in their substitute goalkeeper in Neto because he's an on-loan player from AFC Bournemouth, so he's not even eligible to be in the matchday squad. Then I do suspect that at right back we will see Ben White, who was a substitute against PSG. Then Jakub Kivior and William Saliba will start in that centre-back pairing. Jakub Kivior hoping to recover his composure because I thought he didn't have it against PSG. I thought he lacked that composure. And then Kieran Tierney to start at left back. In the midfield, I do expect Thomas Partey to start. I would want to see him alongside Alexander Zinchenko. That means Declan Rice gets to rest alongside then Martin Odegaard. And then to start ahead, I would expect Ethan Nwaneri, I would expect Leandro Trossard, I would expect, I would expect Gabriel Martinelli. Now, I wouldn't call on Raheem Sterling to start this game because we saw the kind of game he had against Crystal Palace. It wasn't good at all. It was more than below average performance as it comes for a Premier League player. So I wouldn't really put him anywhere near the starting lineup for that particular team, and then leave the rest for the manager to digest in the course of the game. On the side of AFC Bournemouth, we do expect that Kepa Arrizabalaga will be in goal, Dinhausen and Zabani in that centre-back pairing, while Adam Smith and Milos Kakes will be on the right and left-back positions, respectively. Now, Milos Kakes is a targeted man for Liverpool. There is speculation that Liverpool would want to sign him, the left-back, to support Andy Robertson on the other side. And then Dinhausen is a wanted man by the likes of Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Arsenal, Chelsea, Newcastle, Tottenham Hotspurs have all discussed Dinhausen. The 20-year-old Spaniard international is the wanted man. And then in midfield, Tyler Adams as well as Alex Scott are expected to start. And ahead of them, you do expect Justin Kluivert, Anton Semenyo, and then Dango Ouattara as well as Evan Nilsson to lead the lines. Now, Antoine Semenyo is one of the other hotcakes in the market. He's been linked with a couple of moves, including one of them being Arsenal as well as Manchester United. Manchester United being ahead of the rest in that. Now, for Antoine Semenyo, he does have a release clause apparently of about £50 million. No, sorry. His price tag or valuation is about 50 to 65 million pounds thereabout, while that of Dinhausen is the one of 50. He has a 50 million release clause in his contract. Now, for Anton Semenyo, only joined FC Bournemouth in January from Bristol City for about 10.3 million pounds, according to online figures, and he's now a wanted man. Wouldn't be the first time that Bournemouth looked to make profit of a player. They did make some bit of money off Dominic Solanke when he joined Tottenham Hotspurs last summer in a deal believed to be worth 65 million pounds in guaranteed fees and potential add-ons. So that's that. In terms of injuries that both teams have to contend with, we all know that Arsenal are without Jorginho. He had a grip injury and there's something to do with his lung. He was in a lot of pain and is not available. We do know about Ricardo Carafiori. Kai Havertz has returned to training, although I do not think he won't make the squad. He left that to the doctors. Gabriel Magalhaes, his season is as good as done. We know about Gabriel Jesus. Mikel Arteta mentioned that he's out for about 9 to 10 months. They're not really sure. Kai Havertz, we've spoken about Kai Havertz, and then Takahiro Tomiyasu, who had an anterior cruciate ligament injury on his knee, so that one is still out. And Mikel Arteta did have an interview with Sky Sport, and he sort of spoke with a heavy heart. Warm up to finish, and he looked around all the players that were somewhere on the sidelines, and they had 7 players who could potentially start that fixture, and they were all not available for his selection. He wasn't complaining in a way. He wasn't lamenting. He wasn't sort of dwelling in his sorrow and that kind of thing. But he spoke with a heavy heart of, I think, trying to imagine what the circumstances would be if he had those players available. And he talked about Kai Havertz, their number 9 starter. He talked about Ricardo Carafiori, who they signed this summer, who has been out for a combined 5.5 months through injuries. Very decent left back. He spoke about Takahiro Tomiyasu, a very versatile, good defender, can play at left back, right back, centre back. He spoke about him. They really missed him. He talked about Gabriel Jesus, that they had worked so hard to get him back, and he had started firing, and then they lost him again to injury, and then spoke about the experience of Jorginho. Said they would have needed him in a game like that of PSG, but he wasn't available for his selection. He spoke about Gabriel Magalhaes being one of the leaders in that dressing room, not available for his selection. So clearly he did speak with that bit of a heavy heart, considering what the result that they had on Wednesday, but also trying to put the whole season into context in regards to the kinds of players they've had to miss through injury. And then when you add that cohort of 7 players, remember they missed Martin Odegaard for about 2 months, they missed Bukayo Saka for about 3 months. That's between December and late March. So again, that kind of thing has been sort of a disruption to the team. Ben White was one of those that had, a long-term injury, or that kept out him of action for quite a long time. Anyways, on the side of AFC Bournemouth, it's Unal, it's Christie, and Sinistera that are out through injury, or that make today's matchday squad. So do let me know what your predictions are for those particular fixtures. Sorry, for that particular fixture, for that game between Arsenal and AFC Bournemouth in Saturday's late kickoff. Very, very crucial game, like addressed it there for Arsenal, but also very important for Bournemouth. I'm sure they would want a double against Arsenal this season. Can they go and make it? I think it's going to be another difficult game for Arsenal, given the state of mind they are in. I think their minds, or psychologically, are going to be preoccupied by that Wednesday game against PSG, and that's where I think a draw is a possible result. Although I'm still sort of hell-bent to believe that Arsenal may do what's just enough to get a victory, maybe a 2-1 win for the Gunners there on today's game. And at least that's my prediction, that's my expectation. But I would be interested in hearing from you guys what your prediction is and what you think could be the result at the end of the final whistle. Like I said, the other game I wanted us to look at briefly is that game between Aston Villa and Fulham, because of what it means on the Premier League table. Remember, Fulham are 8th with 51 points. If they win today's game, they go within just 3 points behind Aston Villa, who are in 7th place. Now, if Aston Villa win today's game, remember their last being a 2-1 defeat to Man City, it would move them to 63 points, which takes them as high as 4th place as they wait for the result between Brighton and Newcastle. That game having the same kickoff time. So that would really take them to 4th place for temporarily. And if Newcastle are able to win their game against Brighton, then it would slide them a bit into 5th place. But that means they are still within a range of UEFA Champions League qualification. So there is a huge motivation for Aston Villa. Not that there was a huge motivation in their game against Man City, but we all know that Man City left that late. That goal scored by Matthias Nunes, once again the assist being provided by Jeremy Doku, really broke the Aston Villa fans' hearts, as well as that of the manager in Unai Emery, because he thought he had at least secured a point from the Etihad Stadium. But Man City had other ideas on the day, so they stole the victory literally at the death of the game. So today's particular fixture is a huge motivation to try and get back things on track in as far as an attempt for qualifying for the UEFA Champions League next season is concerned for Unai Emery and his side. In terms of squads, you get the feeling that it's not just a feeling, but it's a reality. That Aston Villa are the better team. We all know that they made it to the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League. and they did crash out at the hands of PSG. That was on a 5-4 aggregate score in favor of that. We do know that Aston Villa beat up against Fulham by 3 goals to 1 in the first meeting this season, and it's a fixture that they've dominated in the last 5 meetings, winning 4 of the last 5 and only losing 1. That loss coming on 20th October 2022 when Fulham beat Aston Villa by 3 goals to 0. But this season, a 3-1 victory for Aston Villa. Last season, it was a 2-1 victory for Aston Villa at Craven Cottage and a 3-1 victory at Villa Park. While the season before that, there was a 1-0 victory for Aston Villa at Villa Park. Anyways, so for me, again, when you look at recent form, of course, Aston Villa have it the better. I think at home, they were unbeaten. They're unbeaten in 19 games, winning 13 and drawing 6. Yes, winning 13 and drawing 6. That's their home record. Very, very decent, I think. Remember that loss to Man City was away from home, and that meant that was their first loss in the last 5 Premier League outings, because they beat up against Newcastle by 4 goals to 1, beat up against Southampton by 3 goals to 0, beat up against Nottingham Forest by 2 goals to 1, as well as Brighton and Hove Albion by 3 goals to 0. While on the other side, Fulham managed to sneak or to nick a 2-1 victory over Southampton last weekend, but lost to Chelsea in a 2-1 defeat. Prior to that, we all remember Pedro Neto scoring late in that particular fixture. He did score in the 93rd minute to win the game for Chelsea, and then they also lost to AFC Bournemouth by 1 goal to 0, but had beaten Liverpool by 3 goals to 2 prior to that, and also lost to Arsenal by 2 goals to 1. So they have 3 defeats in their last 5 games and only 2 victories. And it is upon that basis that I sort of, given the historical context between the two sides, given it's another home fixture for Aston Villa, I do really think that they will give Fulham a run for their money, and with that respect, they will go on to edge the fixture by 3 goals to 1. That's my prediction for that particular game. In terms of what I would expect Unai Emery to assemble, how I would expect him to assemble his team, I would expect a double pivot of maybe Amadou Onana and Boubacar Kamara, and then I would expect Yuri Tillemans, John McGinn, and Jacob Ramsey to join them, in the ranks there. And then Marcus Rashford is out injured. So I would expect Oli Watkins to start ahead of that. But given it's a home game, I still wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't go with a double pivot and goes with Amadou Onana alongside Yuri Tillemans, and then so that you can fit there maybe Marco Asensio, Morgan Rogers, and John McGinn on one side, or what's his name? Jacob Ramsey on the other side instead of Morgan Rogers, and Oli Watkins to lead the lines. Ezri Konsa in that defense, and Pau Torres could start, while Lucas Digne, who didn't have a very good game against Man City, could return to the starting 11, as well as Matikash, and we all know the mainstay in goal is none other than Emiliano Martinez. On the side of Fulham, Bernard Leno, former Arsenal player, in that starting 11 is expected. Alex Iwobi, Emil Smith-Rowe, Raul Jimenez, Ryan Sessegnon, been quite a good player recently. Sasa Lukic in that midfield alongside Sander Berge, Calvin Bassey in that backline, as well as Joachim Anderson, formerly at Crystal Palace, and then Kenny Tete and Andy Robinson. That's really the main composition for that side. But Marcus Rashford is out through injury with a hamstring injury. Reece Nelson is absent for Fulham because he's an on-loan player from Arsenal, as well as Rodrigo Muniz, who injured his Achilles tendon there. So that's the expectation. As far as Super Sunday fixtures go, I think we will find time tomorrow to engage on them. I do not know. I'm still sort of trying to find what the ideal timing will be for us to do the broadcast. for that particular preview. It could be within the morning hours, it could be in the early afternoon. I'm really still pondering on that to see whether what time is best suited for us to be pulling it off. But briefly, still on Super Sunday, Manchester United up against Brentford, following that impressive victory in Athletic Bilbao. I do not think that there will be too much result going into that fixture, but they will face a side that is highly motivated following that 2-0 victory over Nottingham Forest. Bryan Mbeumo being targeted by Newcastle, according to recent reports, although it is believed that Brentford would demand a fee of up to £60 million for anybody that wants to sign Bryan Mbeumo. Has had quite an impressive season so far. And then Johan Visa, a danger man, will cause Manchester United troubles. So really important game for Man United. Man United, can Harry Maguire pull the heroics that he did pull in midweek? Can he show us more trickery? You did wonder in that moment whether it was Lamine Yamal taking on Bilbao defenders, or it was really Harry Maguire. But it was Harry Maguire in that moment, in the build-up for Manchester United's first goal on Wednesday. So that fixture is going to be really crucial and entertaining for us. Although I will not be surprised whatsoever if Manchester United go ahead to lose that fixture at the G-Tech Stadium there. And then the other key or very interesting fixture to look out for will be between Brighton and Hove Albion versus Newcastle. Fabian Hatzler, I remember their last game was against West Ham. They managed to beat up against West Ham by 3 goals to 2. Yes, that goal coming on late in the game that they did score. And Yaya Toure did visit the Brighton camp and spoke to some of the African players there in what's his name, the Ivorian Coast International, the youngster Simon Adingra. Yes, Simon Adingra was the player that they spoke about. They spoke to, as well as there's another that squad, the holding midfielder at Brighton. His name is slipping out of my mind. Somebody remind me his name. In who scored the winning goal versus West Ham on last weekend. I'm forgetting his name. Carlos Baleba. Yes, it was Carlos Baleba that scored that goal. It was Carlos Baleba. Scored a very stunning goal in that fixture. But Newcastle is also another hard nut to crack for any opponent that faces them. Brighton have not had the best of forms recently, and yet Newcastle have all the motivation in wanting to qualify for next season's UEFA Champions League. So you can understand where the motivations lie. Then West Ham versus Tottenham, that fixture, Tottenham are really more intentional on what's ahead of them in Europe. I do not think this game will be anything to really ponder about for them. Not that they would just want to go outrightly and lose it. In any case, they would people last weekend when they scored first against Liverpool. That header by Dominic Solanke, but went on to lose by 5-1. Like I said, for all the teams that are still in Europe, as far as the league is concerned, especially in the Premier League, for every game they play, just remember that at the back of their minds, they do have that fixture in Europe to ponder about. And Tottenham will be back in action on Thursday against Bournemouth with that 3-1 victory advantage after the first leg. But they will know very well that Bournemouth managed to beat up against Lazio at home by 2-0. So subconsciously, they will know that they have not yet advanced to the finals. And Manchester United, I cannot say that deal is as good as done, but I would say it's about 75% done, because anything can happen in football. So you do think that while they have the 3-0 advantage, they won't take it as a given that they are already in the final. Although it may take a football miracle for Manchester United to capitulate without scoring and lose out to making it to the final. And then, of course, Chelsea and Liverpool, very, very crucial game. I think we'll get to speak more about that particular fixture in regards to what it means. Chelsea are also still in the semi-finals of the UEFA Conference League, and they did win their fixture by 4-1. Nicholas Jackson, Noni Madueke, as well as Jordan Sancho on target there for Chelsea. Nicholas Jackson scored a brace coming off the bench. The only consolation for Jagaden was by Saltness. He's the one that scored that goal, I think, in the 8:30 minutes around there. And so they play Liverpool. Like I said, Liverpool have nothing to play for and have nothing to lose. So really, that kind of game is where they can really trouble you, because they are literally playing it for fun. They're playing it to complete their season. They want to complete it on a high. But again, a game away at Stamford Bridge is not the best of motivations. But then you do understand that if they win all their remaining 4 fixtures, is it 4? Yes, that's an extra 12 points that takes them above the 90 points mark. So that's the only motivation. And beyond that, my expectations really are low on the side of Chelsea. That's why I think Liverpool could edge that fixture, even with all Chelsea's ambitions of wanting to play, of wanting to finish in the top 5. But remember, on the back of that, Chelsea have beaten up against Fulham 2-1. They've beaten up against Everton in their last fixtures, 2 fixtures. So while they've not had the best of games during those games, they've always found a way to try to win, and they managed to do that. So keep it locked on the channel, and we'll continue to engage on some of these fixtures and what they mean. So really, really impressive stuff. Anyways, allow me to wrap it here and wish you a wonderful rest of the weekend. I can see it's already 1 p.m. Have a nice lunch if you've already had your lunches, but do let me know what games you'll be focusing on, and we'll be back on here prior to the kickoff of that Arsenal game, provided all circumstances remain constant. I will be also back maybe at halftime and full time, so we'll keep that conversation going. In as far as those fixtures are concerned, we'll be keeping tabs on those games. But for me, the priority is going to be on Aston Villa, that Aston Villa game versus Fulham. I'm really looking forward to it. We are just a couple of about 1 hour and 20 minutes away from kickoff, and then that game between Arsenal and FC Bournemouth is another crucial fixture that I will have my attention on. But before I let you guys go, maybe the few things that you need to know in regards to fixtures elsewhere. Atletico Madrid are away to Deportivo Alaves, but I do not think that game is I mean, it's an important game, but I mean, I do not think it's one that should be keeping them on their toes. But yes, Deportivo Alaves are up against Atletico de Madrid. Villarreal do have a player called Alex Baina. Alex Baina, who is being targeted by Manchester United, is an attacking midfielder, also a left winger there. He scored, I think, 6 goals and provided 7 assists, 7 in 27 appearances for Villarreal. So he's being targeted by Manchester United. That's Alex Baina, who plays for Villarreal. So Villarreal will be up against Osasuna, while Las Palmas will be up against Valencia. But the reason as to why I bring up La Liga is because we do have Real Valladolid up against Barcelona, and Barcelona do have a chance to continue pushing for that title chase. Remember, they are 4 points ahead of a second place Real Madrid, with Barcelona 76 points, 72 for Real Madrid, while Atletico Madrid have fallen far down that pecking order, being 8 points. No, sorry, not 8, 10 points behind the leaders. And for me, I get the feeling that the title is now out of reach for them. Mathematically, it is still possible, but it is out of reach. While Athletic Bilbao also in 4th place there. Let the loss to Man United in midweek do not deceive you that they are a very bad team. Maybe elsewhere in the Italian Serie A, again, there's why the Italian Serie A is crucial is because Napoli, who are 3 points ahead on that table, are up against Lecce. That's away to Lecce. Inter will host Hellas Verona. That's at 9:45 for Inter, while Napoli versus Lecce will come at 7 p.m. At 4 p.m., Parma will be up against Como. Remember, Como are under the charges of Francesco Sola Fabregas, and Jurgen Klopp is trying to pursue Cesc Fabregas to take him to RB Leipzig. So there's that conversation. While Jurgen Klopp himself is being mentioned in the ranks of Real Madrid because there are people that appreciate him as a coach. They would want, maybe some are considering Jurgen Klopp over Xabi Alonso in terms of who the Carlo Ancelotti replacement will be, but also Cagliari will be up against Udinese there at 4 p.m. in the other fixtures in the Italian Serie A. Like I said, it's 74 points for Napoli at the summit of the Italian Serie A, with Inter Milan at 71 points, Atlanta at 65, Juventus at 62, Bologna, Roma, and Lazio do follow there. So UEFA Champions League places are still up for grabs in as far as Italian football is concerned. Bologna having quite a very, very good season, by the way, I must say. But for me, Como, with their 42 points, if they win, they can go to 10th place above Torino. Anyways, allow me to wrap it at that and wish you a wonderful rest of the weekend. Do not forget to continue sharing our content, watching more of the content. But thank you to all our new subscribers, those that engage with us during these live broadcast sessions. Your time is not taken for granted. You're much appreciated. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and bye-bye. See you next time.